So topic today is exploring toxic relationship and the impact it has on our mental health. So the question to ask ourselves is, what is toxic relationship? So it's any relationship that will make you feel worse, make you feel worse than better, one that makes you feel unsupported, misunderstood, demeaned, or attacked. It's been reported by the York paper in 2020 that 84% of women and 74% of men report having a toxic friend at some point. On the screens, you can see a bit of illustrations as well. So I know we have the lady on this side who says, you're always right. No, you're not. Some of the words that would come out when they have a toxic relationship of any form. And again, somebody putting up the hand while the other one is trying to talk to them. And it's important to just show that from the pictures, it could be either way. Toxic relationship does not have to be from a majority gender, shall I say. It could be from either gender. And I hope we'll discuss that even more. Next slide for me, please, Cicely. So what are the signs of a toxic relationship? So you can see on this, when toxic relationship comes in, it creates such a divide. You can see the two people sitting and they have their backs onto each other. And some of the things you have is fear of confrontation, dishonesty, patterns of disrespect, lack of support, miscommunication, resentment, and jealousy. Signs also, again, which can be more signs that could be showing up as toxic relationship, is feeling drained and depressing. It's all about them or all about him or her, not being supportive, lack of trust and communication, constant negative energy, people who take all and don't give at all, mutual avoidance, excessive jealousy, brings out the worst in you, and continuous disrespect. And as we continue to talk, have our conversations today, please bear in mind some of the things that we've talked about here. Are they familiar to you, or have you seen them happen? Have they triggered you to think, oh, this could be a sign of a toxic relationship? So be good to evaluate the relationships that we have at different levels to see any of them brings a toxic relationship. Now, as I mentioned before, the reason why we're discussing about toxic relationship is because it has an impact on our mental health and our well-being. Bless you. And the impact can be both physical and mental. And this can be can show up in signs of maybe disrupted sleep, digestive issues, muscle tightness, fatigue, you're constantly tired, immune compromise, meaning that sometimes you also get ill very often, low self-esteem, confidence issues, no personal development because you have no drive. And that could be in terms of career, business, leading also to depression, narcissism, which you see as some of the narcissistic behaviors, strength, anxiety, and just to name a few. And it would be good to have a look at different signs and different ways that people have seen this being expressed in the different relationships that you've had. Thank you for that, Cicely. Welcome all who are just joining. We're just going through a brief introduction on toxic relationship. And my first definition for the people who missed is that a toxic relationship is one that makes you feel unsupported, misunderstood, demeaned, or attacked. And as we said, on a basic level, it's any relationship really that makes you feel worse rather than better, rather than better. And as I voiced earlier in terms of what the context we showed, toxic relationship can exist in just about any context. And that's what we want to look at today. So it can be even from the play group, it can be from the boardroom, and also can go up to the bedroom. So the next thing we normally do is have our polls. So I'm going to set up the polls. And this will just help us to have more of a conversation. But before I set this up, is there anybody who wanted to give him some, talk about any of the things that I've talked about? Are we all happy to go to the polls? Okay, we're all happy to go to the polls. And people have joined as well. Today we're having a very triggering conversation, as Cicely said before. So if you find anything triggering in our conversation today, please do feel free to take 5 or 10 minutes out, and you can reach out to Cicely, myself, or James on the call. So I've launched the polls, and I'll give about 3 minutes for us to complete the polls today. I hope everybody can see it on my screen. Okay, so the questions we are answering is, number one, how common is toxic relationships experienced in your communities? And the second question is, who is at risk of experiencing toxic relationship? And the third one, if I can scroll up, yeah. And how much and easy do we talk about toxic relationship? So I can see 5 people have answered so far. Just gonna give you another couple of minutes and then we can discuss. Thank you. All right. Okay, so I will end the polls. I have 6 responses so far. Thank you for doing that. And let's share the results. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go through the questions, and then this is a point where we get to discuss about our topic for today. So how common is toxic relationship experienced in our communities? So people said, 83% of you said very common, 17% of you said common, and nobody said not very common. Would anybody want to share why they answered on question 1 to open up our topic for today? And you can do that by raising your hand virtually. If your screen is on, I can see you, or you can use the icons at the bottom. My voice in power? Oh, I think you're still muted if you're talking. Hello, Nayasha, you're still muted. Let me just try and unmute you.
Except if she's struggling to unmute herself.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Let's try and mute. Nayasha, you might have to maybe log out and log back in if it's not allowing you to unmute. As we wait for her to try and sort out the mute button. Anybody else who wants to come in before that?
Sorry, I don't remember your name.
Eva.
Eva. Oh, Eva, sorry. Yeah.
No worries.
Yeah, it seems to me as though almost every relationship has some level of toxicity. You know, as we go around this world, every relationship does have some level of toxicity.
Yes. Just the measure that differs, I think, and the degree, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
It does. It does. It does.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You hardly find even a relationship between a grandmother and a grandson. Between husband and wife, there's still a great level of toxicity in it. And maybe we just need to be better educated so that we could avoid this toxicity.
True, true, yes. Thank you for that, Constance. Nayasha, are you on now?
Oh, sorry, I've joined from my phone now.
Okay.
My keeps saying it's not responding, so I don't know what that is about. So yeah, I was. Oh, what can I remember what I was going to say? Yeah, so I was going to say that I have found that throughout my healing process, I had learned that everybody who I was around was toxic. So everybody who I was brought up by, which then meant that everybody that they associated with were toxic, which obviously then led me to find circles of people who were also toxic. So as difficult as it was to help my healing process, I had to disconnect from a whole network of people in order to be able to move on and heal and to get to where I need to be.
Yeah.
So, and you can find it even with the people that you least expect. So as you get rid of the most toxic, it then leads you down to the people who you didn't think were as toxic, but still have some toxicness within them. But also I think it's important to learn that not everyone's toxicity comes from a bad place. So as long as they can understand and recognize and heal and move on from that, that can help things. But also it's important to know those who are toxic and won't change.
Yeah, you said something very interesting there. Not everybody toxicity comes from a bad place. I think that's interesting. Do you want to expound more on that? And also maybe to follow on question would be, when did you realize they were toxic? If you don't mind me asking, if you don't mind answering.
Yeah, that's fine. And I'm going to give quite an in-depth, quite a close response. So for example, so my mum, she was a toxic parent. And so our relationship wasn't very good from birth. So I have like abandonment issues from birth, where her mum intervened from a toxic place as well. But our generational trauma is rape. So from that, obviously you become emotionally disconnected. Then some of their toxicness comes from a place where they want to protect, but they're going about it in the wrong way. And unfortunately, my mum didn't get time to heal from that. She was starting to, as she got ill with motor neurons disease. And so that we were able to start to build a bit of a better bond, because she realised that her parenting hadn't come from a good place. So she made steps to try to change that. But then unfortunately, she died when she was 41. So we didn't get to complete that journey. But I've been able to continue it on within myself and learn that some of my parenting when my children were younger was quite toxic. And as I've been able to heal from that, that's been able to change, which has then had a better impact on my children in the long run.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, that I think was that line that you used about people being toxic. It just, you have to find out the generation of where it's coming from, like the genesis of it. So I think that's important, because again, it makes us not judge a book by its cover. And if people realize where the toxicity is coming from, then it's a good one. James, I don't know whether you want to come in on this one at all.
Sorry,
I think.
Oh yeah, sorry, Nyasha still has something. Yes,
Yeah.
Sorry, and I was just going to say, even if it seems like there's good reason, it's important to learn that once the person's been called out on that, if their behaviour doesn't change, then regardless of the reason why they're toxic, it's still, you know, that's not a good enough reason for you to stay amongst their company.
Yeah, definitely. James, do you want to come in or not?
I think she has, and also what Constance was saying, really toxicity depend on what you define it to be and what you accept as toxic and what you don't accept. And I think for me, from a cultural perspective, moving from an African context to reside in the West, is also about how do we continue to define toxicity. What is it? You know, and at what point do we make any move to amend things from our own perspective and the other person's perspective? It could be spouse or daughter or son or friend or whatever. And I like this thing when they said, be there for others, but never leave yourself behind. And I think that will probably help us as we continue to have this conversation, because sometimes there's that little step that we take and we don't take step back to reflect. Am I leaving myself behind? Am I doing too much in this relationship? I know it's good to invest in it. Like Constant was saying, at what point can we start working on it? So I just want to throw that in to continue to trigger our minds as we go along with the conversation.
Thank you for that, James. Yes, another powerful one is, are we carrying ourselves along, which is important. Anybody else?
A bit.
Oh yes, Cecily.
Yeah, I like the fact that we are touching, James has touched on the cultural element, because that's where I was coming, and especially based on Nyasha's experience, the cultural difference, a parent will always come in from a love point of view, but it does not come across as such. And I think as we work with the communities and with individuals, it's important to acknowledge that and bring, come up with a solution that works for both. That element of understanding is quite important. And I think that's where Nyasha got into, and the healing started from there.
Thank you for that, Cecily. Yeah. Anybody else wants to comment on question 1? How common is toxic relationship? Oh, yes, Dr. Kanina.
Now, this thing about toxicity, I think it's a very broad type of a concept. And when we look at a family or very close relationships point of view, I think sometimes we miss the point, because look at it from the wider or the broad perspective, like in issues of workplace, toxicity and workplace, toxicity and racism, toxicity and this type of big and small people, power and powerless. The way those types of toxicity appears, and then it resorts to, shows itself in symptoms of, say, like emotions, anger, and those type of things, and sometimes as habits. You might see people doing certain habitual things related to toxicity. So to me, this subject is almost a medical thing, but it is difficult to define the environment in which it occurs, because it occurs in different parameters and measures. And like, say, when you are being given service in a racism context, how toxicity plays part in that type of an environment and things like that. And I think it's a very sensitive topic, because I hear there is a discussion I listened to saying something like, when toxicity is related to habits or behaviors like narcissism, they cause deaths to some of the affected, the people who are receiving the products of narcissism from the person who has that behavior cannot bear it, and it may resort to death unintentionally. I think it is a death which is caused by emotions or something like that. I don't know how, but I listened to a topic like that one. So I think for human beings, this is one of the critical subjects I've ever come across.
Yes, thank you for that, Dr. Kanya. I totally agree with you. It's a very wide topic, almost clinical topic, yes, as you said, and hospital, and it touches around so many things. It can be like, as we said in the discussion before, it can go from playroom, boardroom, environment, like it's so widespread. And I think, as Constance earlier said, it's any relationship that you form, there is always bound to be some level of toxicity, you know. So it is a wide topic, very sensitive topic, but very crucial topic to make sure that people are aware. And as James said, to have a self-reflection of how is this toxicity affecting you? And are you aware that it's actually affecting you? Or are you even aware it's there? And yeah, thank you for sharing that. I didn't even know it can go up to death. So yeah, but I can see it. People who have suffered from it, yes, I'm sure it can have a clinical impact. I can see Nyasha has her hand up.
Yeah, so the death comes into it from I don't know if anyone's heard of it, is ACE scores. And so depending on your ACE score, 10 being the highest, so like you've experienced many different levels of trauma and it's been able to impact you in many different ways, it starts to have an effect on your body. And so some of the illnesses that people have are as a result of trauma that they've been through. So, you know, then it starts to affect your heart and your stress levels. So people who have an ACE score of 10 are likely to have more medical issues than others who have had less or not experienced any at all. And then obviously there's the suicide side of things. I mean, sometimes people look at suicide as quite a selfish thing to do, but to me, I can see why people think that, but if you've had that kind of a life and you don't see any way out of that, then what else is there really left to do?
Yeah, thank you, Nyasha, for that. Thank you.
And very quickly, Eva, before you move on to the next one, just to respond to what Nyasha was saying about the ACE scores and how and what you can do. There are a lot of studies suggesting that it's really about some of these forums that we have, the ability to reach out, the ability to understand, the ability to problem solve. And also when we are growing up, and I think we had a classic example from Nash, that when we absorb things from our first caregivers, maybe parents or guardians, we mimic the way they deal with issues. If they are suppressing it, they are not talking about it, we think it's a normal thing to do. We don't talk about it. When things happen to us, we hide it from others. We don't talk about those things. And these things begin to eat us. So stress is really quite key in toxic relationship at whatever level, even in the boardroom. If you're the one always receiving the negative bit, criticism, and all of those things, you begin to suppress those feelings. They become toxic, and they can also begin to eat some of your organs. For example, diabetes, coronary heart disease, and all of those things are actually elements of these things. And Nyasha actually mentioned about trauma. And it's really important to understand what trauma is. You know, so relationships that are toxic and traumatize people, but it's really about reaching out, making sure that your score is reasonable. Otherwise, it becomes very difficult for you to cope. And those are the people that we eventually either commit suicide or become mentally unwell and can really have some other physical health problems as well. I just want to add that in. But Nyasha, thank you so much for bringing that enlightenment.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Welcome. I've noticed some people have joined us, Jacinta, and I think Zoom caller. We're just looking at the topic of toxic relationships in our community. We've already begun. We're just discussing the answers we've given to the questions. So I think we're going to go to question 2. It is a very important conversation we're having today. Please do take care of yourself and just make sure if it's too much, then you can reach out to Cicely or James or myself. Yeah, do take care of yourself. So let's go to question 2. So who is at risk of experiencing toxic relationship? So we had women and girls, with 17% of you said yes. 17% of you also said men and boys. Elderly, 0. That would be interesting to see. And then 67% of you said anyone. So anybody who wants to explain to us why they answered? And it would be interesting to see whether the elderly in our community, do you experience any toxicity, or maybe when you become older, life becomes better. We never know. So it could be. It would be nice to hear your views on this one. I can see Moto has unmuted. I'm so sorry. It's only showing Moto G7 power. Oh, okay. No. Yeah, anybody who wants to contribute to this question?
I'll go. I was trying to wait to see if anyone else was going to say anything. Yeah, I think anyone is at risk at being in a toxic relationship. I think the most easiest people to access toxic relationships is children, because if that's what they're being brought up around, then obviously I think anyone who's experienced trauma and has low self-esteem, they're open to toxicness, whether it be from a friendship group or a relationship. And the elderly, because, you know, people who are caring for their parents and feel like they've been mistreated might see it as an opportunity to get them back. And so if they're out in the community, you know, they're targets for people to attack them. And if they're being cared for by people who aren't in the family, if they've got no family, they're in a home and things like that, and they're mistreated, that's also toxic behavior.
Absolutely, yeah. So I like your answer of saying everybody, but also the fact that you brought in children to say if they're being brought up in a toxic relationship, the thing that went up in my head is how do they actually get to the point they realize, oh, you know, this is a toxic relationship, because kids will adapt, as James said earlier, to what is being brought up. So it actually takes a while, I think, for kids to realize, oh, this is bad, you know. I would think. Sorry,
I think it depends on the level of the toxicity in the home. So from the experiences I've told you I've experienced, like there was toxicness coming from left, right, and centre. So that was the household. But I think, you know, you start to learn that things that are going on are wrong, but you aren't able to necessarily articulate that. So children not speaking about it is not the same as them not knowing about it. And obviously at school, you know, you get to socialise, you get to talk to other people, you hear what their homes are like, you start to make comparisons, and it, you know, your education then really comes from there. And it's only when you reach particular ages that you're able to do certain things about it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, thank you. I see Moto Power is up. Did you want to share something? I can now see you.
Hello, good morning.
Hello, I can hear you.
This is Moto G7, a bit shy to speak on camera, as Cecily would tell you. I'm more of a one-to-one person. Okay?
Yes.
Right. Toxic relationships, you know, I see some of it as more, it seems to be a generational course passed on from one to another. I personally feel that some of it is done unconsciously, or just of developing a bad habit. And then for me personally, the way I handle my children, I don't handle my grandchildren. I found it a different, I found a way to sit down and reason with them. But because of the way I was brought up, I wasn't reasoned with. It didn't happen in my day. So the thing is, and this thing could go on and on you move from one sphere of life to another. Someone mentioned elderly. Yes, elderly people could be abused. They could find themselves in toxic relationships. And the worst of it is when you, in an organization, we expect people to behave in a different, in a more sort of controlled way. And they especially when you're on your own, you become like a single target to them. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, can hear you.
Yeah. You become on your own. You're not only elderly, you're on your own. You're in certain organizations where you expect people to behave better. You become a target to them, a single target. So you're all, and the thing is, people, I don't know, I find the attitude of some people, I think as time goes by, we should be able to monitor your own attitude towards life. Some people seem as they get older, they seem to get worse and worse. And they become very, very toxic, very abusive. And I've had to separate myself from certain people because I cannot cope with this attitude. Every time you see them, every time you come into contact with them, you just want to flee from them. That's not the way to live. And I've had quite a few occasions where I've had to separate myself from people. Right now, I'm in an organization where it seems that the people have no respect for each other. And I feel that we need to do something about it because it doesn't help, because this thing is just going wrong. It's like it becomes a generational curse from time to time. So we need to look at ourselves, assess ourselves and the way we deal with others and do something about it.
Thank you for that. Yes, I think, as you said, we need to assess ourselves and something needs to change. And by us coming together to seek the solutions of what change that we want to see, that's important, because we, as you said a couple of times, you think it's a generation curse. So it has to stop with somebody, the back has to stop with somebody. Yeah, thank you for that. Yes, Ben, Dr. Kanina.
I think I like these answers in question 2, where people indicated that the gender or everybody is equal. The proportion of distribution is equal. That means anybody can get into this situation. And according to me, the main causes of suffering from toxicity come from independent or dependent, freedom or non-freedom on all things of life. If you cannot be independent socially, politically, economically, anything, even health-wise, anything human, if you are dependent or you lack independence in those things, you are most likely to experience toxicity. Yes. or the fruits of toxicity. And that's why I like the distribution, that anybody can get into that situation.
Yes, I see from your polls, everybody, from the answers people have given, it's everybody can be in that situation, because it's so prevalent in any relationship that you come across. The degree differs, but there is some element of it. Thank you for that, Dr. Kanina. Anybody else, or shall we go over to question 3? I think
just needed to comment on those responses. It's very, very intriguing, and especially on what Ben and Velma have shared there. Looking at the responses, the one on who experiences most. There was nobody about the elderly, but actually the other question is about, is it everybody or anyone? And based on the experiences that we encounter in the communities, we actually know it is everybody. And the best we can do as a community is to have such forums and raise that awareness, because as it has been saying, some of it is done unconsciously. Somebody is not aware that they are doing it. And this is why communication is very, very important, so that you are highlight, or you make the other person realize what their comments or what they are saying makes you feel. Otherwise, they will go on, and that is not healthy. So this awareness is so important, but looking again at the impacts, the compromise of immunity, and I think Nyasa highlighted onto that, it will bring both physical and, mental health. You are not strong enough to manage some of the, simple illnesses that we encounter in life. So that's how important this conversation is.
Yeah, thank you for that, Cicely. So we'll go to question 3. And the question was, how much and easily do we talk about toxic relationships? And the answers we have were 90% much, 40% much, or 10% much. So nobody said we talk about it 90%, but 50% of you said they think we talk about it 40% most of the time. And 50% of you also thought just 10%. Is anybody going to share with us why they gave the percentage of what they answered? And I would kind of agree with those, because based on this heavy conversation today, I don't think it's something we talk about very, very often. So I wouldn't have gone with 90% if I had to answer it. I would have probably gone with even 10%, I think, because it's not something you get to, well, especially in a community, how exactly, or sometimes we subconsciously talk about it, we're not very aware of how much we talk about it. Yeah, to be interesting to hear people's view on that question.
I think for me, I think we talk about it when the symptoms appear. And that means there's a reason now to address it or to talk about it. And that's the reason why I chose 40%. And my assumption is that about 40% people who are affected by it end up creating symptoms which would call for a type of a response.
Yes, definitely. I think also social media has really helped people to talk about toxic relationship. I think a few weeks ago, there was a very popular Nigerian lady singer who passed away, and it was because she was in a toxic and abusive relationship. And I think there was a lot of outcry in the media. So I think the media is also propelling the conversations about toxic relationship, whether people can be there not showing their faces, or but they can type away and say this is happening, or this is going on as well. It is helping to bring this topic to light in whatever shape or form or whatever context it is in. Yeah. Anybody else?
I think at the same time, Eva, we do recognize the effect or the impact of the media. It's also us to look at the downside as well in terms of what is a standard relationship compared to a toxic one. From an African man or perspective, it's really important for us to begin to look at what facilities we have as communities, how we resolve issues, how do we deal with some of these things? Are we proactive about talking about it, or are we shy away from some of these conversations because they are difficult? Because if I'm in a relationship, for example, between wife and myself, there are a lot of other people affected by that relationship because her family, my friend, her friends, they are all part of that relationship. What impact do they have? And what standard are we looking at? Are we making a lot of comparison Okay, I went to my friend's house and the husband is doing this, or vice versa. So it's really important for us to bear all of this in mind. And like I said in the beginning, when we migrate, when we change situation or environment, that can also have a massive impact on us. Our religion is also important to us, our educational background, the job we do, the family we have, the kids we are raising, all of this can really bring us together. It can also put us apart. There's a very good example I want to share, because this happened in our own community, where the lady used to do double shift and the man also used to do double shift. So they didn't have any time to come together. Whenever there was an opportunity, the husband wanted to seize an advantage for intimacy and all of those things, but the lady was tired. But that understanding wasn't there. He felt that because you're my wife, it's my entitlement, to be intimate with you. And the lady said, well, I'm tired. Because I have to cook, I have to look after the kids. And for some of us men, African men, I'm not saying everybody, but that's kind of even that ability or willingness to support, to even clean in the house, to cook, it's not available, it's not there. So imagine a whole wife coming from work and she has to do all of this. What time has she got? What energy has she got left for intimacy? So it's really important to talk about some of these things. And we have a lot of setup now in our community, for example, what Cecily was talking about, and also the well-being hub. There are a lot of growing facilities for us. So it's really important to begin to look at how we carry this forward. And I'm really pleased that people are talking about it. Let's really engage with boldness. Let's don't shy away from it, because it's really important to us.
Thank you for that, James.
Yeah.
Yes, it is important that we have these conversations. Yeah. Anybody else who would like to?
Yes, it is important that we have these conversations, but maybe up to 5 or 10 years ago, we just found ourselves in a sort of stew in which we just didn't know what was going on. We felt a certain way. There were certain behaviors that we had, but we just didn't know what it was all about. See? So I think that sometimes it would have to do with education, maybe being educated from school age, as well as the internet. We still need to be educated from school age to know what is appropriate and what is not appropriate. Because like in my personal case, it was like a sort, as Thelma said, it was a sort of generational curse. I just knew that there was just like something that wasn't right. It wasn't right with me. And it wasn't until I went to university that we were doing a module in psychiatry. And I was determined to listen to what was being said. And that's when I understood, oh, this is a toxic relationship. Oh, you don't do this. You don't hit your child. You don't, banish your child from the family and all that sort of thing. But with me, I was able to, after doing that module, I was able to implement certain behaviors. But there are lots of people who can't, because they just find themselves in this stew and they just don't know what it is all about.
Yeah. Yes, you're totally right. I agree with that. I can see Nyasha wants to come in and comment on that.
Yeah, I think a lot of the services need to do more as well. I mean, I know a lot has changed and improved since I've used any of them, but I mean, a lot of the things that kept me where I was when I was younger is the mistakes that were made, or the ignorance that was passed by schools, by social services, where they always listened to the adult over the child, or they didn't think it was important enough, or you didn't fit the right qualities. you know, there were so many things that, you know, because I've been able to get my social services reports back, and that's helped with the last book that I wrote. So seeing where things had gone wrong there that shouldn't have gone wrong, you know, that could have saved me like a long time ago. So I still think, like I said, whilst things probably have improved in certain places, I still think more needs to be done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah, definitely.
I also think that
Moto Power, were you coming in? Because you've muted yourself again.
sorry about that. Yeah. My experience is that, I'm hoping I'm not the only one, I might be, is that culture plays a big part in toxic relationships. And to me, it's biblical. The Bible says, nation will rise up against nation. Okay? I've had people, you know, sadly to say that because they're from another country, you know, it's political really, but it becomes toxic, you know? And people, I'm sorry, but as people of color, we don't always like to see each other get by. We have this way of just trying to, our comments are sort of destructive. There are people who have not yet learned, they're getting on in age, they have not yet learned to use constructive criticism. So the things they say could be very, very destructive and very, very toxic. So I think culture plays a big part. And one of the things we haven't learned yet is to come together, is to unite. As the saying goes, united we stand, divided we fall. Sometimes I find people from other cultures, they just cannot get on. And for some reason, I mean, it's not just, it's just like maybe 1% in each culture. It's not a general thing that one country is against another. It's just maybe just a few. And I think sometimes their attitude is based on their own circumstances. They have problems they cannot deal with, and they just react in a way that it comes off as toxic when they're not personally toxic, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, I think we can hard sometimes to find common themes, but we can try. As you said, we all
yeah.
have to keep trying. Yeah,
Can I ask a
definitely.
question, please?
Yes, I can see Karim has his hand up.
Yeah, what are the signs of toxic relationship?
People always having well, I wouldn't answer it, let someone else someone else.
Yeah, go on, Thelma. Go on, Thelma.
No, my experience is that people, you try to be okay, you entertain somebody from time to time, you think you're doing a good, but actually in the end you find that person, you're making a whip for your back, you know. You try to address the issues that they have. They might say to you, okay, my husband doesn't give me housekeeping money, you know. Okay, have them for lunch a few times. But the attitude they come with, oh, they would look miserable, you know. They wouldn't sit and have a conversation. Fancy sitting at a table having a meal with somebody, and you're trying to have a conversation with them, but they just like, as though they have a mouthful of lime juice, you know, or lemon juice, and they don't know whether to swallow it or not. And this would happen time and time again, and then they become very critical. And then you think, and they were always trying to sort of light a fire under you. That to me is a toxic relationship. And every time you see them, they're being aggressive. They're never ever pleasant. So to me, it's their own personal issues in their life that they're not coping with. And to me, that's a toxic relationship.
Thank you for that, Salma.
Yeah, very well said there. And I think it's the right time now actually to watch a short video clip with you know, those signs and symptoms that have already been alluded to so far. So let's watch this and you know, have a good conversation around it. Just bear with me as I do this. Okay. Okay. I'll come out again. So try to see, listen, or see how many points you come out with from this talk.
Healthy relationships are one of the best things in the world. They lift us up, challenge us, support us, and make us feel like we're superhuman. Nothing can get us down when we're in a good relationship, especially ones that are just beginning. But if you're in the beginning stages of getting to know someone, how can you tell if it really is healthy? Often we get so wrapped up in ourselves that we don't see when relationships are unhealthy. It might seem like a far away, it'll never happen to us thing, but unhealthy relationships are more common than you would think, and sometimes sneak up on you. If you suspect you might be in an unhealthy relationship, listen on and see if any of these match up to you and your beau. 1. You fight a lot. No, we don't mean arguing over who has to clean up after you've both cooked dinner. We're talking about yelling, threatening, and screaming at each other. If you two are getting into screaming matches over every little disagreement, you need to rethink why you two are together in the first place. 2. You hide things. And we don't mean candy or Easter eggs. We mean things like texting other people, lying about where you were, or other dishonest actions. If your partner will get mad at you for texting your best friend forever, or going out with friends instead of staying home with them, you might just be in an unhealthy relationship. 3. This way or the highway. If your relationship always revolves around how the other person wants to do things, or how you want to do things, you're not in a good relationship. Partnerships involve being partners. This means you need to compromise, listen, and discuss before actions are taken. If it's always one person's way, you two need to sit down and sort it out before resentment and anger starts to breed. 4. You feel guilty. This one's a little harder to pin down. Your partner might not even be aware that you're feeling this way. Heck, you might not even be aware that you're feeling this way. If you get worried about taking time for yourself, or if you feel that you're not allowed to, address it with your partner. It might be a miscommunication, or it might be a clue that your relationship isn't as healthy as you think. 5. It's one-sided. So much of relationships is about sharing your burdens. When you're in a relationship, you get someone to lean on, talk about problems with, and help to deal with your struggles, and vice versa. You need to make sure you're available to be a support system for your partner, letting them lean on you when they need to. If the relationship is based on one person or the other, it's not a real relationship. It's just taking advantage of someone. 6. They put you down. We don't mean physically, we mean that they put down your hopes and don't support you in your dreams. You need someone just as brilliant as you are. Someone who will help you achieve your goals, or at least cheer you along the way while you strive for them yourself. Any partner that says your goals are stupid is not a partner you want to have. Get out. Quick. 7. They refuse to do things that matter to you. If you've said 3 times that you hate when the dishes sit in the sink for days on end and your partner still doesn't change their slovenly ways, you need to get out. They clearly don't respect you as much as you respect them. If they did, they would listen to your concerns and make an effort to do the things that matter the most to you. 8. You're codependent. This one's a little trickier to identify. If you and your partner can't live without talking to each other every minute of every day, you need to reevaluate your priorities. Your relationship should be a happy addition to your life. 9. They make you feel insecure. Your significant other should make you feel like you're the greatest thing in the world. Why? Because you are. You're an intelligent, hardworking individual who respects yourself. And if your partner isn't respecting you, you need to leave them. They aren't healthy for you and you deserve better. If you feel insecure in any way, get yourself out. You're in an unhealthy relationship and you'll be much happier without them. 10. They're abusive. It seems obvious, but sometimes people in relationships can't see what's actually going on. They justify their partner's actions or take the blame on themselves. Don't. If your partner is verbally, physically, or sexually abusive, you need to get help and get out. If you aren't sure how, or if you need help, talk to a counselor or doctor or someone else you trust. They'll be able to get you the resources you need to take care of yourself. 11. You change yourself to be what they want. This is a subtle sign of an unhealthy relationship, but should be a big red flag. If your partner says, "I like blondes," and you go out and dye your hair, it means your partner doesn't actually want to be with you. They want to be with their ideas. Find someone who loves you for you, and then you'll know you're in a healthy relationship. 12. You're unhappy. The biggest sign of being in an unhealthy relationship is when you're unhappy. A relationship is meant to be a positive experience. You're supposed to look forward to seeing your partner, not dread or stress about fitting them into your schedule. Let the relationship go, and you'll feel much happier. Trust us, no relationship is better than an unhealthy relationship. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. And as always, thanks for watching.
Thank you for that clip, Cicely. I think it had, I took out about 12 signs of toxic relationship and how to identify them. And I wonder whether anybody wants to talk about any specific one of them or highlight anything about them. I think for me, the one that resonated with me, and I think it's you're unhappy. I think that's always like a major thing, you know, like a light bulb thing to kind of make you reflect and think, oh, what's happening? Because if you put yourself in a reflective mode, then I think you're able to make an assessment of what's going on and then be able to then have a critical view of what's happening. Anybody wanted to comment about the video and anything that resonated with them or they've seen or they think this is a trigger sign for me or something that would make you think twice or thrice. James, I see your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Eva. I think the clip really did expose us to what those signs, what we can do, and what needed to be done as well. But one of the issues that I want to add to it is really how much do we relate to ourselves or with ourselves, and that's really where she was coming from. How do you know that you are unhappy in the relationship? You know, what other factors are there that are impacting on you in that particular relationship? I think it's really quite important, and that also can be quite cultural. It can also be generational as well. It can be something we have inherited or acquired, and because the definition of a toxicity in the relationship, it depends on that particular individual, you know, and that particular individual is relating with herself or himself most of the time, if not all the time. Am I happy? Is everything okay? How do I know? What can make me feel happy? What standards do I need to bring? Am I being perfectionist? Is it something I'm doing unrealistic or realistic? Am I really expecting what I'm supposed to expect? Am I getting what I'm supposed to get? But am I giving what he or she's supposed to get from me? So it's really around those issues that we need to continue to dwell on in this conversation, even beyond here, to heal ourselves. And I think healing has been mentioned several times. So how do we heal in the relationship? Do we heal outside it or do we heal within it? If we're going to heal within that relationship, what do we need? What tablet do we need to take? If we're healing outside, again, what tablet do we need to take to heal outside the relationship? Because it's really important. I just want to add that bit, Eva, as we go along.
Thank you for that, James. Ayesha?
Yeah, so for me personally, it was healing from other things that I had been through that made room to enlighten that what I was dealing with now wasn't right. And so like you can only know how happy you are. You can only know how unhappy you are if you know how happy you've already been. And if you haven't had happiness before that, you have nothing to compare anything to. And you're living in what you believe to be normal because that's been your whole life. So I believe you can start to heal within it as you heal from other things. And then the majority of the healing work comes from after, when you're out of it. And so that's when I wrote this. And in there, it's a poetry book, but in there is poem. One of the biggest poems in there is about my narcissistic relationship that I was in, and then the mental health that I live in, and then, you know, all the different experiences that I've been through, like on my healing journey. But I've definitely done the most work now, and it's only now within the last few years as an adult that I've learned what happiness is and what it means to me, and to know that you can't always be happy or always be sad. You know, for me, the most important emotion to have is contentness, because then as long as you can say you're content, you will always experience happiness. And obviously being able to have sad things and stuff that go on as well. But yeah, So
Yeah, thank you for that. I see it from your perspective, definitely. If you've never experienced happiness in a certain way, how do you know that you're really unhappy? And it's great what you've written in your book, and I think you should share it and tell us where it's available from, and put some links on the chat. I think as you found healing, I'm sure what you've written in your poems should be able to also give healing to other people as well. So yeah, congratulations. That's amazing. That's really good.
Yes, Eva.
Yes,
Yes,
Karim.
Eva. Yes. Can I mention what Mr. Memo was talking about? Toxic relationship is dependent on the socio and economic environment. You know, in some society, men is domineering. If they don't think like that, it's dependent on the environment and the society as well.
It does, yes, it does.
So, but if
Absolutely.
you don't think like it's a domination, the woman have to subdue.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. Thank you for that, Karim. Absolutely. It depends on your environment, your culture, where you're coming from. All those things can create toxicity. Yes, absolutely. Constance, did I see your hand up at all?
No,
Oh,
sorry.
that's all right. That's all right. Yes, thank you for that. Anybody else wants to share more about what they saw? All right. If not, thank you very much for your contributions today. I think I'll bring in James to give us our word for today, or our conclusion to the topic that we have on toxicity, toxic relationships and our well-being.
I'd also, Eva, sorry, I ended to jump out there. Just to mention that, following on this conversation, let people be aware that we already have about 16 community ambassadors, who can support us go through some of these experiences. And I believe, Eva, there will be another training coming up, and you can tell us more about that.
Yes, so there's a training that comes up every month. We try to do training, which is coming up at the end of this month. I'll send out the dates for that, and we try to create more awareness so that more people in our communities can cause a change. I think Thelma was very much about, we need to create a change. We need to be able to talk about these conversations and about relationships and our well-beings in all shapes and forms. So we'll have that training coming up. Tea and coffee as well, every Tuesday at the Hub, which is down on Oxford Road. You're all welcome from 11:30 to 1. Thank you, Nyasha, for the books on there. So please have a look at Nyasha's books, which she's written. And it can also be found on Amazon as well, which is fantastic on the work that she's done on herself, which is really good. And we also have gardening as well every Friday. Please email me if you want to come in for the gardening. Thank you, and over to James.
Thank you, Eva. Thank you, everybody. And it's been a quite engaging morning and also part of the afternoon. And the topic at hand seemed to be quite challenging sometimes. And like Eva said, if you find issues that we discuss a little bit difficult or challenging, you have opportunity to reach out to us and also other support system that you have to really look after your emotion, because it's really important. I would just like to share a saying by Paulo, saying that when you say yes to others, make sure you are not saying no to yourself, because it's really important to bear that in mind. Because sometimes we say no to ourselves to satisfy the other person. And this is not just about relationship at home. It could be in the community, at work, your boss or your manager or a teacher or anybody or a friend. So it's really important to put that in for your own safeguarding, looking out for some of those things. I'm not saying don't say yes, but say yes to yourself from time to time. And I think when we look at inner happiness, it's the many times we say yes to ourselves, it becomes easy for us to really reach out and begin to dig up what can make us feel happy, because happiness is a relative term. I think 80% of it is inbuilt, it's invested in yourself. What we get from outside is just a bonus. But most of the time when we feel containment, it's really about what is in you, what values you have. So we like to share three kind of, I think the summary of all of what we have spoken about today really for me is, number one, as a partner or in any relationship, the bottom line really is to be responsive. And responsive, I mean, you have to make yourself available to the other person, make yourself available to yourself in terms of what am I really feeling? What am I thinking? Am I thinking that I'm the second best in this relationship? How do I think about my worth? Do I feel lovable? Am I thinking that I'm not lovable or I'm not likable or I'm not loved in this relationship? So it's really important. That is where you become responsive to yourself and the other person. And within that responsiveness, you look at reassurance giving, because we all need that. Human being, you need to be reassured that everything is okay. We can all testify during the pandemic. There were a lot of news time, you know, when the prime minister, we have scientists alongside him, whether down the street or wherever, he used to speak to us. But that reassurance, everything's okay, this is the data, we need to do this, we're working on the vaccine and everything. So that reassurance is needed in our lives when we are relating with somebody. It's really quite key. Commitment, we need to show sign of commitment. I mean, we all know what commitment is. We commit to things, to cooking, to eating, to enjoying, to going to work. Why can't we do the same thing in relationships? So that's really quite important. That comes under responsiveness. And you need to be approachable. I really don't think as a partner, I should be kind of thinking, what can I say around my partner? You know, do I need to tiptoe around this partner? Is that a white elephant or elephant in the room that we're not talking about? So being approachable and ability to talk about this thing is really important. It can really help us to feel more open. I think that's what the clip was saying. If you can't feel happy around somebody, then what is it about? And also stay connected. How connected are we? I'm not saying when you go to work, you have to constantly call your partner, but find time to call, or partner at home also need to find time to call the husband or the wife. You know, how are things? You know, things like that can really help. That's how you stay connected, but that comes under responsiveness. The next thing is accessibility. We talk about access to the NHS services, to GPs, to your consultant, to the supermarket, to the bank and everything. So why can't we replicate the same thing in our homes? When I mean about accessibility, really, I'm talking about attention. Do we pay attention to the needs of our partner? Are we listening to those little signs, symptoms? When you come home, your partner is a little bit withdrawn. Are we able to explore further? You know, kind of madam or Mrs. or darling or baby, you know, you seem to be quiet. You know, what's going on? You know, is there anything we can talk about? So things like that. Is it the children? You know, is there anything we need to converse? So things, little things like that can actually indicate to the other person that, oh, somebody is accessible and accessible to my own needs, and I can actually get into that mindset and discuss and pull out what the issues are. Sensitivity as well. Are we sensitive to their needs? Do we know when they are not happy? Do we know when they are happy? Is there any pain in their life, whether it's to do with physical pain or psychological pain? When we make comments, is it comment that is demeaning to them? Or is it comment that is really positive? Are we able to say, you look lovely, your dress look nice, that hairstyle is okay? You know, are we able to say those things? And no, from a cultural perspective, perhaps we might say just by looking at you mean you are beautiful, but you need to follow that up with some kind of a verbal confirmation that, you know, this is what we say, confirmation, you know, or you affirm somebody. So it's really important, you know. For some of you who probably know the languages of love, maybe that's something we might talk about another time. But today, really, these are the three. The last bit really is the emotional engagement. How, when we are in relationship, we need to understand that it's an emotional bond or attachment, because those need to be addressed is the need for you to show emotion towards your partner and vice versa, even with people at work, even your children. So is there any love? Do we make mention of these things? Do a little gift, you know? I know sometimes when a husband brings home a flower, most of the time, from my own experience, the wife thinks, well, maybe there's something to apologize for. But sometimes it's really a normal practice to bring flowers back home. There's nothing to apologize, or you're not bringing it to reconcile. You just bring it up because there's an emotion attached to flowers. And if I was talking about plants, for us Africans, there's huge emotion attached to plant. Plant brings about life, that peacefulness, the quietness. It's really about plant, and they really bring nature to us, nature close at home, and they make us feel belong, because food can give us that kind of sensation. So it's really important. And finally, it's important because we've all mentioned it. How are you constantly trying to recognize the fault line or the cracks in the relationship? Are you just forgetting it? Are you just trying to minimize it? Are you trying to ignore it? So it's really important to begin to constantly look at the cracks. Where are the cracks? Are they coming from me? It could be from me. What am I doing that is a little bit difficult for my spouse or for my wife to understand? And that could be a crack. You can really look at how you relate to yourselves, because know thyself is really important. When you know how much are you contributing in this relationship, it's really important for us to bear that in mind. So those are the things I will leave with you today. And like Eva said, and also Cecily, the Wellbeing Hub is available. I'm there. Eva is there. Most of us are there on Tuesday between 11:30 to 1 o'clock. I'm also there on Thursday, except for today. I'm also available if you need any one-to-one time, because this is really us. And this is for us. And this is where we talk about some of these difficulties that perhaps in other areas we're not able to talk about. I'm not saying there are services out there who will not be able to understand, but the reason why we're bringing the Wellbeing Hub close to you is because of those cultural disparities or cultural challenges, because we can understand each other, and we have champions who can actually reach out from a cultural dimension, and we can also signpost people effectively, so that you don't go to the next checkpoint when you're not going to be treated nicely. So it's really important for all of us to work together. But this is something we need to continue to work with. Once again, when you say yes to others, make sure you are not saying no to yourself, please. And I would like to wish you a happy week. Until we meet again, take care and look after yourself. I know some of you might be voting this afternoon or today, and that is also another symptoms or signal or a way how you relate to your politicians or your local borough. So it's important to look at how you vote, why you're voting the way you're going to vote, and what does that mean in your relationship. How can you make it better for yourself? And I would like to leave that with you to make that judgment. But again, please check the cracks. Take care of them. Don't leave them untouched. Take care. Bye-bye.